Hello and welcome back to Kim Reads as we continue with Phantom. I had hoped the safe completion of my mission would leave me free to return to Mazadaran to resume my regular and less onerous duties. But later that day I was summoned to the Shah's presence and required to stay at court. "I have a further little task for you, Doroga," said my young master, and my heart sank, for I had a sudden unpleasant premonition of what the task was going to entail. "I am honored by the opportunity to be of further service, Imperial Majesty," I parroted dutifully, but inside my head a little voice had begun to scream, "Damn, damn, damn! I intend to make you entirely responsible for the safekeeping of my masked friend," continued the Shah, twisting his thin lips of mustache to exaggerate their curl. "You will answer for any harm that befalls him during such time as he continues to please me. Is not, you understand, a task that I can trust to a simple bodyguard. The commission he is to undertake in Mazardan is a secret. I required a man of Pavarn skills and loyalty to keep him under surveillance." I repressed with a shiver. I wanted to say I would have considerably more success following a moonbeam than trying to keep track of Eric's dubious activities. But the Shah's steely glance told me exactly what my fate would be if I dared to demur. "You are the obvious choice of the assignment, Doroga. Already you know him better than anyone else. It would suit my purposes if you persuaded him to trust you. Befriend him, win his confidence, and keep me informed of any interesting developments. The man intrigues and fascinates me, but I am well aware that he will bear very careful watching." I bowed my head wretchedly. "It will be as you command, O Shadow of God," I murmured. "I have no need of a bodyguard," said Erik ominously. "I am perfectly able to take care of myself. And as for you, your presence is far more urgently required elsewhere. No one in common charity could possibly expect you to remain indefinitely. I shall speak to the Shah and have you removed from this farcical position at once." I begged him urgently to do no such thing. "You have no understanding yet how easy it is to fall from favor in this country, Erik. If you refuse to accept my service, it will be seen as a failure on my part, and I shall be punished accordingly, perhaps by many months in prison. "Why do you tolerate such gross injustices?" he demanded quietly. "Why do you not simply write back to your son and tell the Shah to hang himself? All that I possess depends upon the Shah's continued favor. My pension and my estate could be stripped from me tomorrow, my son thrown out to die in poverty upon the streets. I beg you to reconsider your request and permit me to serve in this capacity. Have you been commissioned to spy on me?" He sighed. I made a reluctant gesture of assent and let my eyes drop to the floor. "Well, that's honest at least," he acknowledged philosophically. "I shall have to make sure your reports are suitably interesting, shan't I? I don't want the Shah getting bored and replacing you with someone more efficient." I glanced up at him and once again, in spite of myself, began to laugh. He was a murderer, a thief, and an unbeliever, but against my better judgment, I was beginning to find him likable. Next day, I accompanied him to the boundary which separated the harem from the rest of the palace. This is as far as I'm permitted to go. I indicated the two eunuchs who waited to conduct him to the inner sanctum of the Khanum and reminded him that their Turkish yatagans would be trained upon him for the duration of his presence in the shadowed world. I did not think it was necessary for me to say more. His entry to this exclusive domain was in the nature of a special disposition, such as might occasionally be granted to a doctor. It was a privilege he would abuse on the pain of the most terrible death. No one with any pretensions to success at court can afford to overlook the significance of a harem of intrigue. And I had long ago taken the precaution of opening a private channel of communication within these hollowed halls. It was easy enough to do. Eunuchs are notoriously fond of money and things it can buy. The physical effects of castration require them to abstain from alcohol, but they love opium, good perfumes, and rich confectionery. And for the right price, they are willing to talk to anyone who will pay for the information. The Suragelo was the Khanum's domain, an exclusive, vacuous world whose insidious influence spread throughout the court like a sweet cloud of poisonous perfume. By tradition, it was a place of bitter rivalries, cunning conspiracies, and sudden violent death. To be the mother of the reigning Shah was to reach the pinnacle of power. And the present Khanum was forced to reckon with a handsome, vigorous, clever woman who knew how to manipulate her son to the utmost advantage. She ran the harem with ruthless efficiency, reducing the Shah's three principal wives to be timid subservients and ruling the concubines with a rod of iron. She spent her days eating sugar plums and occasionally smoking a pipe. Out of her frustration, boredom, there had been hatched some formidable tragedies. I do not think that there was a man in court who did not fear her more than they feared the Shah himself. I was willing to pay handsomely for the news of Erik's reception in the veiled world of labyrinth corridors, marbled baths, hushed whispers. The world of Kismet, where he was yet to find his appointed fate. He was taken to a small courtyard, and there, surrounded by half a dozen eunuchs, he waited for the Khanum to appear at the balcony above her ladies. I was told that she kept him waiting there for over an hour, and that the eunuchs were growing deeply uneasy as he began to pace up and down like a caged tiger, displaying the angry impatience that was already so familiar to me. They were obliged at last to draw their yataghans upon him, to confine him to the appointed area, but as they closed upon him, they were suddenly driven back by a shower of multicolored sparks, which issued from his fingertips and ignited a perfect flame of circles around him. When the flames died away, there was a slow, mocking applause on the balcony above, and Erik was left staring at the veiled, majestic woman who appeared in the gallery. "I trust," said the Khanum softly, "that you have not come all the way from Russia simply to show me fireworks." "By no means, madame," Erik said smoothly. "That indeed was a mere trifle, designed to amuse tiresome children." He indicated the eunuchs with a contemptuous gesture, and the Khanum laughed outright. "If that is a mere trifle, then I am eager to see your true skills, and able to see you, my friends. That mask is likewise a device to frighten infants. Remove it." He stood very still, his hands clenched by his side, every muscle in his body tensed. "Madame, I crave your indulgence in this. I would rather not. Indeed. The Khanum glanced briefly behind her to silence her whispering women with a single venomous look. Then perhaps I shall remind you that the only ladies that hide their faces in this country. Remove the mask, or the children will be instructed to perform that service for you. And also take the precaution of removing your head with it. Still, he made no move to obey her, and the Khanum stirred restlessly, made uneasy by such unprecedented defiance. If you have no great attachment to your head, she continued, perhaps you would prefer to share the fate of a Chinese eunuch and carry your genitalia around in a small jar of brine. He made a graceful shrug of mocking indifference. Are you sure a small jar would contain me, madame? The Khanum laughed delightfully. I am sure of nothing where you are concerned, my friend, but I warn you now, in deadly earnest, this is the time I shall choose to overlook your disobedience on the matter. Take off the mask. When the mask landed abruptly at her feet, panic broke out behind her as the younger women hid their faces in their wheels and collided in their terrified urge to distance themselves from the dreadful sight that had been revealed. Be silent, snapped the Khanum viciously. The next woman who screams will be beaten to death for her stupidity. I swear it. Now leave me, all of you. She clapped her hands imperiously, and the women dispersed in a flurry of voluminous pearl-trimmed trousers and thin crepe sets, their bracelets and necklaces clanking wildly together in their hasty departure. The Khanum placed her elegant hennaed hands on the white latticed stonework of the balustrade and smiled down at Erik with immense satisfaction. She drew a diamond ring from her finger, and when she tossed it to him, he caught it deftly, almost without appearing to move. If your imagination matches your face, she said quietly, it will make you the most powerful man in Persia. As he placed the diamond ring upon his finger, the eunuch said that he seemed to smile for a moment. Is that a prophecy or a promise? He inquired. Again, the Khanum laughed. That, my friend, she said silkily, is entirely for you to decide. It did not take him long to reach that decision, but by the time the court left to winter in Mazandaran, he was being called upon to give his opinion at council meetings and remain present during the Grand Vizier's private audiences with the Shah. It was impossible to determine the Shah's true motives, but seemed to take a certain delight at baiting his brother-in-law in fashion. Erik has certain interesting proposals to make concerning Da Afun, my brother, he said one day, leaning back on his divan to observe the effects of his words. I think you should take the trouble to consult him. The Grand Vizier stiffened angrily. With that great respect, Imperial Majesty, I should prefer to rely upon the opinions of qualified men of science on all that matters that pertaining to college. I must, with deepest humility, suggest that this is not an appropriate field for the talents of a court magician. If I say he is to be consulted, said the Shah with a deceptive mildness, then you will consult him. I can assure you will find few qualified men of science who begin to rival his knowledge in any field. The slave who was serving sherbet was forced to withdraw at that point and was therefore unable to give the Grand Vizier reply. They told that he saw Mizira Taki Khan cast a look of pure venom in Eric's direction before the great double doors closed the scene from his view. I was uneasy. I was hoping that the building of the new palace in Mazandaran would distract Eric's attention from the dangerous power game that he seemed determined to play. On our return to the northern provinces, I accompanied him to the chosen site, a lovely wooded eminence half a mile outside Ashraf, and then watched him sketch until darkness fell. Are we ready to go yet, Erik? I sighed at length as hunger began to gnaw me inexorably. We've been here more than 8 hours, you know. Have we? He said vaguely. I suppose you want to eat again. It really isn't necessary to eat more than once a day. You know, perhaps when you go back to Ashraf, he would have some lanterns sent out to me. I honestly believe from that point, utterly absorbed as he was by this project, he would be gladly forsaking court politics entirely. But he had set a ball rolling down on a long slope, and it began to gather momentum without his aid. Once the preliminary designs for the palace were completed, he began to suffer the irritations that inevitably result when a man makes himself indispensable on too many fronts. Neither the Shah nor the Khanum was prepared to remit their constant demands for amusement and advice. He had implied omnipotence, and consequently they did not expect him to be the subject of the limitations of time and energy which confined ordinary mortals. He was a great magician, and surely a great magician ought to be capable of being in several places at the same time. He was seldom spared attention at court for more than a day or two, and each time he was parted from the stone and mortar of this slowly rising by a French preparatory summons. I was afraid of simmering his temper would finally betray him. The Khanum was the worst perpetrator of his frustration. I'm bored, she complained, sketching languorously on the satin cushions in her private chamber, where I am told she had taken to receiving it separately only by a thin gauze curtain. I am bored. What do you give this tedious emotion in your country, Erik? La nuit, madame. La nuit, echoed the Khanum softly. What a charming seduction turn of phrase you Frenchmen have. Do you ever feel la nuit, Erik? Hello, madame. Time and idleness are both necessary prerequisitions to boredom, and God knows I have little enough of either commodity those days. Don't you scowl like me like that, you little wretch, said the Khanum peevishly. You are sufficiently ugly already without twisting your horrible little face in that fashion. In fact, you are so incredibly and unbelievably repulsive that it's almost attractive in a strange way. He was silent. I am told she often tormented him in this fashion, seeking to exact some unknown response, but he only stared back at her with stony-eyed contempt. So, do you not feel boredom then? What, I wonder, are you capable of feeling, Erik? Anger, he said softly. Murderous anger. You will find me more capable of that, madam. I think I should see that you are angry, mused the Khanum thoughtfully. Yes, but I think it would be very interesting. Anger can be strangely attractive too, you know, in the right person. The Khanum sat up against her cushion suddenly, watching him through the thin gauze curtain with interest. Tell me, Erik, have you ever had a woman? There was a tense throbbing silence between them. Come on, I demand to be answered, she prompted abruptly. Are you a virgin? Madame, he sighed, I am very busy. Too busy for a woman? No true man is that, my friend. Would you like a woman, Eric? I could arrange it, I could arrange it very easily. Is that not what you desire above all things? Those who are watching it say that his hands closely, convulsively on the folds of his cloak began to twist with a slow, savage rhythm. What I desire above all things, he said coldly, is to be left in peace to complete my commission without disturbance. The Khanum frowned behind the open worked aperture of her veil. You think of nothing else these days but that pout. I'm jealous of your ridiculous devotion to that pile of stone and mortar. My son demands altogether too much of your time, and I intend to tell him so. You were brought for Persia for my amusement, Eric. Mine. And you will amuse me, Eric. One way or another. I forbid you to return to that side until you devise some form of new entertainment. An amusing death, perhaps. Go now and think upon it. I met him as he left the harem, and I could see as soon as I looked at him that he was in an evil temper. She wants amusing deaths, he shouted. By God, she shall have them. He worked like a madman over the next following weeks, and within a month it was finished. A strange hexagonal-sided chamber, entirely lined with thick mirrors, which puzzled me immensely when I was invited to view it. What is it? I demanded curiously, as I stared at my own image reflected an infinite number of times. It's a torture chamber, he told me shortly. A mirrored room? Mirrors can kill, Daroga. You may safely take my word for that. His voice raised gooseflesh on my arms and made me suddenly very relieved to leave the chamber. I did not go back in to look at the tortures. I know many who subsequently did. People who spoke graphically of horrific illusions taking place within a room, heated to the temperature of a furnace. Illusions so real that they reduce victims to suicide in a few hours. The Khanum was so delighted by the ingenuity of her new toy, the 3 black eunuchs were duly required to present themselves in Eric's apartment, bearing variously a gold purse laden with gold, a silver-plate hookah, and plenty supply of hashish. He tossed the purse carelessly on the old ivy inland table without even bothering to glance at the contents, but I saw him examine the hookah with an interest, and soon he was reclining on his floor cushions, with a hookah smoking efficiently between his lips. Perhaps tore off the mask and flung across the room, laughing uncontrollably at nothing in particular, and I recognized in this irrational behavior the first signs of the drug's intoxicating influence. I had never tried hashish, but I knew it was of its terrible effects. Soon all his senses would be distorted beyond recognition. Time would telescope inward upon him, and the faintest sound would be heard as a deafening roar. Ecstatic euphoria would be succeeded by intense physical desire and a savage need for violence. Some of the worst crimes imaginable have been committed here in Persia under the influence of this particular drug. I fully understood why the Khanum had chosen to reward Erik with hashish rather than opium. She was impatient to explore the dark regions of his incomparable imagination. Who knew how many more amusing deaths still waited to be conjured from the dungeon of his tortured mind. And that's the end of that chapter. Thanks for listening. See you next time.